Welcome to Job Sharing and Beyond, the Future of Work podcast that goes beyond the traditional 9 to 5. I am Karen Tischler, speaker, consultant, and host of the show, where we hear from global experts every other week to discover innovative solutions and tips on how to remain a relevant employer in the future. Hello everyone, I am very appreciative to have Patrícia Hirschnerová from Slovakia as my guest on the show today. Patrícia is this year's Forbes 30 Under 30 and a proud mother of 2 under 2. She is a Nexteria Leadership Academy alumni on a mission to create win-win dialogues where they are most needed. Her passion for data-enabled conversations led her to a dream job in a tech startup. She then decided to take a career break whenever her first daughter was born. Knowing her employer is very open to flexible workers, she felt confident about taking the break and soon realized that in Slovakia, this scenario is still more of an exception than a rule. She then co-founded Working Mothers. I apologize for my poor pronunciation of the Slovak word Pracujuce Mamy. And at Working Mothers, there are now a team of 6 who are working together with both companies and returning professionals to help them achieve win-win situations. Welcome to the show, Patrícia.
Thank you very much for having me, Karen.
Thank you so much for coming onto the show. Now, we have so many people from all over the world listening to us. Could you share with them where you're calling in from and if there are particular sites or a type of food that you could recommend people from your area?
Sure. I come from Slovakia, Central Europe. And I know that for majority of people abroad, we need to add that in Central Europe. That's totally okay. So Slovakia, it's a very tiny country. We have 5 million people living here. And if I should recommend something, it's definitely our national food, which is called brinzové halušky, which means it's kind of dumplings with a very traditional cheese on it. And also I love a very small town, which is called Banská Štiavnica. It's a mining town that is right now like fully blended with tourists, but it's a beautiful town, a medieval town to visit. So that's like a tip if you're coming.
That sounds really beautiful. Yes. So now, Patrícia, could you give our listeners an overview of your professional background and how you became the co-founder of Working Mothers? That is the English translation to the Slovakian word.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, which I can't pronounce. And you co-founded it together with Terezia Mihalikova.
Yes. So that's a funny thing because originally my background is in linguistics. I studied interpretation. And back then when I decided to go to college, my dream job was to work as a translator for European Commission and for these bodies. But then as I was studying and I took some part-time jobs, I ended up in a tech company working in as a consultant, as a business developer. And I realized that there are so many different things that I was doing as I was studying, that it was kind of confusing for me, like what is going to be my career path. And then luckily enough, I had this opportunity to take a 3-year development program, leadership development program, which it was called Nexteria, where we had this whole like coaching sessions about connecting the dots of our career paths. And if there is one thing that I really did realize, it was the fact that in all the jobs that I had previously, from my first part-time jobs until the university, what I enjoyed the most was being a bridge. Was the one when I was the one who helped people to understand each other. Then that was the moment when I felt really the flow, the fulfillment of it, regardless of the nature of the job I was doing. So, and then at that time I got married and we wanted to have children. So I asked myself, like, what is going to be next? Because although I really loved my job and I knew that I can come back whenever I want to, I realized that there is this topic of there is this fear that I found very common when I was talking with my friends, with my girlfriends, and like all of them successful women in business, and we were asking the same question, like, what will happen after we'll become mothers, right? And I realized that the luck that I had with my employer was, I would say, just like a more of an it was an example to give, but it was not very common. The majority of women I've talked to were really concerned because they knew that being a mother is kind of like they have to pay this tax of being a mother, and that they have to decide between their work and their families. So I started to do like little digging and little research, and I wanted to know what is the what are the things that we as potential mothers or like currently mothers need the employers to do to help, in order to help us to have the balance between the work and the family. So I launched like a very quick research on social media, and then Terezia came along, and she wrote me saying like, "Hey Patricia, this is exactly the topic I was thinking about. So let's grab a coffee." And so we spoke, and we realized that at that stage we didn't really know what exactly to do, but we knew that we wanted to found an NGO to kind of like open the conversation, because I just gave birth to my first daughter, Eva, and I remember like holding her in my hands, saying, "Okay, I'm officially a mom, but I still feel like I'm the same person, you know, like my brain was not somehow like changed. I'm still the same person. So although I am a mother and this is the new role for me, I still have the potential and the career path to follow, but I want to have it like very well ordered, and I want to have the family first and then the work." So with Terezia, we started to have like regular sessions, and we started to support these mothers who are currently on maternity leave by doing webinars. And then we started to work with companies who approached us saying, "Look, I see that you are very well at working with mothers. We want to hire someone part-time. Can you help us?" So we realized that there is this like commercial potential in this, and that by helping both groups, by helping women and employers, we can really make it like a living, and we can we can have an impact about on what is going to be the future of our daughters. So that's how we ended up as working moms.
Thank you so much for sharing. That is so interesting. And so what is currently the situation if somebody is a stay-at-home parent and is trying to return after several years of unpaid care work? Is that something that, is easy to do, or what's the situation?
Okay. So comparing to maybe United States or Canada, we have a very, very luxurious maternity leave policy, I would say. We have, if you're like in my place, here in Slovakia, you can have up to 3 years of paid maternity leaves. Well, partially paid, because you are paid by you get an allowance from the Social Security from government, right? So you have this possibility to spend 3 years with one child, and then obviously if you have like other children, then it accumulates, which is like a great thing, because I really enjoy being home with my children. At the same time, you are then expected to take those 3 years, and after the 3 years, the whole flexibility question is kind of very at the early stage here, because of the whole how to say the cliche about mothers, and the fear. We call ourselves, like you mentioned, the working parents or parents on maternity leave. We talk a lot about women because here, like the 99% of primary caregivers are women. So that's why, and although there are men going to for maternity leave, they don't face the same challenges as women. So so it is very it's very graceful in terms of like we do have this possibility to stay with children, but then when the whole preschool starts, there is a huge clash in the time schedule, because when you have the kindergarten, the preschool that is only open until 4, and you have a 9 to 5 job, then it's technically impossible to get a paid job. And then once you, there is this whole discussion about when to start the negotiations about time when you are having an interview. But this makes it technically very challenging to find a job which makes it possible to still pick your child at preschool, which results into less women going back to work after having children.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is, like, while, as you said, in the US and Canada, as far as maternity leave, well, in the US there is no federal maternity or paternity leave to start off with, but in Canada is definitely much shorter than it is in Slovakia. But I feel there is still a much more limited amount of jobs that are on a more flexible part-time basis compared to, for example, Germany, in the sense that it is the perception is, if somebody wants to do a part-time job, it's going to be on an entry-level position, because the fewer numbers worked per week is automatically equated with less commitment to the position, as well as maybe the quality of work will not be as high. And it obviously couldn't be more from the truth, but that is a current perception which I'm trying to change. And so it's very interesting to hear, your perspective from Slovakia. And one of the reasons I try to, talk about parents rather than mothers, because when I talk to my father advocates on the show and in general, I'm learning more and more. I feel there is this perception that dads do not have the same ability to do unpaid care work. And so from my perspective, in order to change perspectives, we have to have more male role models to be able, to make them see and say, oh, somebody is actually be able to do this. Like in Norway, it is very common for dads to take months of paternity leave. And it is even from, my understanding, if you don't do it as a dad, it is perceived to be negatively against you. But it's taken decades to get to this point. So I'm very impressed that you guys are, the front trailblazers trying to change perspectives.
It is, like, I can tell you, like, from my personal network, there are like more and more dads taking these leaves. But the funny thing is that they are sometimes considered as heroes, when they do this, because, like, it's normal to take the leave when for a woman, but when a dad takes it, it's like, whoa, you're a great man. And I believe that this is something that should be discussed within the couple, like that the couple itself will know what is the best arrangement for their family. And I've been working with a lot of women who spend like 10 years at maternity leave, and they are happy about it, and their family is happy about it. So that's totally okay, and we're not pushing anyone to go back to work. And at the same time, I believe that when the time comes, regardless of the fact if it's like at 6 months or at 6 years, there is a lose-lose situation if we don't allow those flexible arrangements, So that's what we're trying to show by like very specific examples and case studies from companies here in Slovakia, that it's actually a win-win situation if you enable it, because of course it does depend on the role, right? And the whole pressure coming with the senior positions, that's a fact. But we are like, we keep talking about the fact that that mothers, and especially part-time working mothers or parents or caregivers, are very loyal and very time-wise in terms of the schedule, and they will not spend 45 minutes chatting in a coffee room. But at the same time, I feel like there were so many people talking about this and nothing changed, or at least like it was very, very slow. And on the other hand, I believe that the reason why it didn't change, it was because we had this one-way approach. We just wanted to advocate for ourselves, like saying like hire moms because we are like the best and we are the most productive creatures, etc. But I think the reason why it didn't work is because we didn't speak the company's language, and the companies didn't speak the language of parents. They offered so many benefits that they had like zero impact on the parents. So that's why I believe that if we want to change something, we have to have this dialogue where both parties will speak the language of the other one.
I could not agree more. And I truly feel it also really helps if you have the senior leadership buy-in, and ideally you have some role model. And I don't know what it's like in Slovakia, but in many countries, it's still predominantly male senior leaders. So if you have examples of them publicly stating, I am taking paternity leave, or other senior leaders that I've read about in countries saying, I'm stepping down because I want to, support my children and, do my share of unpaid care work. So then that for a junior member of a organization, I think they might be more willing to say, okay, I can try that too. And by the same token, somebody on a senior level who has experienced what it is like to look after, especially, young children, how much effort it takes, I think they will likely have a different approach and will likely offer different benefits because they have gone through this themselves. And so we're talking about flexible work, and my favorite type of flexible work is definitely job sharing. And I mean, is that something that exists in Slovakia already? Or is that, what you guys are trying to advocate for more?
Technically, it does exist. From the legal perspective, as an employer, if I have two people job sharing the same position, I can have them sign an additional paper, like an agreement that from now on you are working as a team, and the whole stepping in terms of in case when the child gets sick, the whole like distribution of a workload and the logistics, this is totally up to you. So from now on you are working as a team, and I am only like, I'm seeing you now as one body. So whatever happens, if you need help, you can reach out, but I will not be the one like scheduling your part-time sessions. So technically this exists in Slovakia, but it seems like no one really uses it. So there are types of work, or there are companies where there is a team working, like sharing the same agenda, but it's not really like part-time workers, but it's like a huge, like, let's say, like working on shifts when you have like customer centers, etc. So the whole idea behind the law was to support the employers, so they don't fear the fact that they would be like micromanaging the job sharers. But at the same time, it's something that was like still it's hidden, and we try to encourage, not only encourage employers to do it, but maybe to listen to them more carefully and hearing about what is their roadblocks, like why they didn't implement it. Because I don't think that it's only about not knowing it. It's also about the fears that those also companies and HR departments are sharing and facing.
I completely agree. I mean, first of all, I think that is amazing to hear that, there is a law. It's very progressive. So I'm very impressed. And then secondly, to your point, there are so many myths about job sharing. When I talk to, my guests who in their respective country focus in particular about job sharing, I mean, it's like, I think the biggest issue often is that people have never seen a job sharer in action, so to speak. And so there's this fear of the unknown. And like the other thing I really think is that often people cannot imagine positions being able to be split. And so I think what I really like about your law is the fact that there is no micromanaging, because from all I've read and heard, in a way, these job sharers need less time with their manager because they have their own sparring partner who they can discuss things with, right? But I think that's often, not understood for somebody who has never really dealt with job sharing. So, and then the other thing, like top sharers, the fact that, there are people, or like SAP, as is my favorite example, SAP in Germany, every management position has to be written out as a job sharing opportunity.
Wow.
Yes. But it sets a statement. And so the fact that I can quote that, because often people say, oh, well, it cannot happen on a top sharing base. Oh, yes, it can. Yes. So yeah,
it can. At the same time, it really depends on the sparring partner, because like I can totally imagine being interviewed for a job sharing position, not knowing the second that might win. And it might be very, like, it can work very well, and it can be very difficult to think at the beginning.
I completely agree. And I think that's, again, another thing. And this is why I don't know what, the situation is like in Slovakia, but my feeling is having more people working from home because of the pandemic ultimately establishes more trust work, because obviously the employer can't see people working from home. And so then the next step is, as you said, job sharing is all about trust, trust between the job sharers, as well as trust from an employer or manager. Yes, they can do the job without my micromanaging. So that's my hope, that, it will make people more confident that, they can let people do job sharing without having to manage them, without, like being there. So that's my hope. But
we share the same hope then.
So now, we've talked a little bit before about paternity leave and the perception within Slovakia. So, like, how and you said there is a very generous maternity leave. How long is paternity leave, or is there a legally scheduled paternity leave?
There is, like, in the law here in Slovakia, it's still called maternity leave, but let's call it paternity leave. Basically, when a child is born, You like me. I can tell you an example from my family. So I had 6 months of coverage. I had like 80% of my gross salary covered during 6 months. Then after the 6 months, there are two scenarios that can happen. Either we swipe with my husband, so he would take the paternity leave, and again he can have 6 months of 80% of coverage, or I can stay and have until my child gets to the point where she's 3 years old. I have like an allowance. Here in Slovakia, it's 350 euros monthly if I was working previously. So I can have this, like it's an allowance that I can have until, and the job is guaranteed during those 3 years, and then it's over. So during those 3 years, we can swipe with my husband.
That is so interesting. And so now, what happens when, say, somebody takes that amount of time and then returns? And because you said it is guaranteed, and the reason I'm curious about is, like, in Germany there is currently that campaign called Pro Parents, and it basically tries to include also parents, the status of parents, to not be able to discriminate it against, because while technically there is some legal protection, there have been ways where parents were discriminated when they return back to paid work, and then maybe the equivalent position they were given might be in a different location, or within an organization, all of a sudden they are more sidelined, I would say, things like that. So I'm curious what the situation is like in Slovakia when somebody returns.
The same. What happens, But here I would maybe I would maybe encourage people to look, or we encourage women to look at it from the different perspective, because yes, the fact is that life happens, and if you spend 10 years out of the workplace, then eventually, like, things change, and you might be guaranteed a position, but it might not be the same. Now, is it a problem for some people? Yes. Is it an opportunity? Definitely. From my experience, what happens is that whenever you're offered a job that is maybe not the same that you've been working on previously, there is a new kind of things that you learn. So your knowledge and internal knowledge is growing. So the fact that you're like upskilling yourself. And the other thing is that it might be a more junior position. Okay, so you are maybe paid less, but the fact that it's a possibility to start and to roll this all out peacefully and gradually, I believe that this is a benefit. So I would not encourage employers to offer more junior positions to those returners. But if that happens, I wouldn't see it as a problem, because as a matter of fact, if you have this possibility to gradually get back and to earn a new skill set, then it's just a matter of time and of maybe self-assessment and being able to speak out for yourself, and you will get the promotion, and you will get maybe like even more interesting job that you had before.
If somebody, say, returns after 10 years, I can definitely see there are, things change, and so I'm curious, one of the things that I've noticed that is still very underestimated is the type of transferable skills that somebody learns during unpaid care work. And I've done a LinkedIn study, and I did a poll, and I guess it was like 9% of the people responding said, somebody actually asked me and said, what did you learn? And to me, it goes hand in hand with, especially, mothers returning, that there is a lot of lack of self-confidence, because people still perceive it as it's a gap, when from my perspective, there is a lot of soft skills that are being learned. So I'm curious, what is the perception in Slovakia?
Well, interestingly enough, we had this last session with some returners like 1 week ago, and the question here in Slovakia that is asked is whether they should put this on LinkedIn or not. And my answer is definitely yes. So yes, there are so many creative ways to describe what you were doing, from community manager to coach to junior members of the team. You have all these like ways of explaining what you were doing when taking care of your child. Maybe what I would do in this case, if you're asking about what the questions are after, like on the interview,
Right.
maybe if they ask like how was the maternity leave, I would definitely start like very nicely said, you know what, there are so many things I've learned. I'm so excited to list you all the skills I just got. So even though they don't get the question directly, but they can use the small talk question, and like gaining the possibility to sell themselves in this area.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's so important. And, I don't know if you know this, but interestingly, so LinkedIn I guess it is in the US, Canada, and I don't know in what other countries, maybe English speaking countries, they have created a pre-filled button that like a drop-down button that you can actually say that, you were a stay-at-home parent, a caregiver. So it becomes an official, job title for that period of time, which to me, it really helps with normalizing that time of your, work history in somebody's resume. So yeah, I was very excited when that, happened.
Yeah, like the whole self-confidence thing, I would say that it's the number one issue that we're facing when returning back to work. And I believe that this is not only the case of like our relaunchers or returners back to work. This is like a specialty that like a lot of us are like having and coping with. So this is something that we can work with, and I believe that it gets like the more you work on yourself while you're still on maternity leave, the more confident you will feel about yourself when the day comes, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, there are so many things that one can learn. And what, I've read is people are saying, write down all the things you are doing. And like, the skills you are learning while you are on maternity leave, paternity leave, because you might not remember, but then you are in an interview and you're like, yep, this is what I learned. So yeah, absolutely.
That's one part. Sorry to interrupt, but the other part is that sometimes like we are not able to look at ourselves like critically, and that's what we suggest usually when women are struggling, and they're saying, oh, I spent just 10 years not working and I don't think I had any like skill or any like good thing to do. We encourage them to have a coffee with their friends and ask them like, what do you remember what I'm good at, so that's why like you can have this self-assessment, but also you can ask your friends and colleagues to help you with this.
Couldn't agree more. And then again, as you're saying, like, having role models, especially male role models who write about it, who talk about it. These are the things I've learned, because then it helps people to reflect and say, yeah, that is, I didn't think about this. And so, yeah, there is so much that can still be done. And I love having our conversation. Now, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would to make sure that, you share with our listeners?
I would maybe just stress the importance of the win-win dialogue, because whatever the situation is, we will still, if you are afraid, whether you are like an HR or a mom going back, we are all like, we're hardwired to get to talk about ourselves, about what we want But at the same time, if we realize that this is about understanding and about finding what is the win situation for the other side, then the whole conversation might have a different ending. So that's maybe for the end.
Thank you. That is great. That's a great ending. Well, how can people reach out to you on social media? Where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn with my name and my surname. And then also on Facebook. I'm not really active on Instagram, but if you put pracujucemamy.sk, which is probably in the link description down
yes,
below.
I will put it in the show notes.
You can find us there. And if you have any comments, or if there are a lot of examples and role models that we share there. So if you have someone who would maybe be worth showing as a role model, or if you have a job, if you have a job proposition for a flexible work time, then we're very happy to help with that.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
It was a pleasure for me, Karen, as well.
Thank you.
Have a great time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We hope you gained valuable insights and new ideas. To keep listening to future episodes, please head over to iTunes or your favorite player and subscribe and give it a rating. We would very much appreciate a review and for you to share it on social media, so more people can start innovating in how they offer employment. Until the next time, goodbye.